I love being in Miami. There's something about the culture, the people, and the food that are really special. And I consider, like, New York is one of the most diverse places in the world, right? But Miami's very diverse. In different parts of Miami, right, there's these communities that exist that have really delicious food that you only can get in that place. Now, if you go to that place, that's on you. If you do go to that place, I commend you. I met Nadal and Ryan 7 years ago at Charleston Food and Wine Festival. I was working on developing my fast casual rice bowl shop, FIELDTRIP, and I met Ryan through San Pellegrino, and he said, I got this guy, he could develop all your branding for FIELDTRIP. And that's how I met Nadal, and he's done all the branding for FIELDTRIP to today, which has been very great to bring it to life. FIELDTRIP has been open for 4 years. But before I kind of jump into why community and restaurants are really good, I just want you to learn a little bit about me.
When you're a kid, you think about a field trip, you're going somewhere exciting. You're like, you can't wait to get off the bus. When you're on a field trip, when you're an adult, wherever you travel in the world, I don't care who you are, it's all based around food.
1, 2, 3, stir fry.
I'm Chef JJ Johnson. I'm a father, I'm a restaurateur, I'm a chef, I'm a cookbook author. I've been nominated for a couple of James Beard Awards, Rising Star, Best Chef in New York. I own a fast casual restaurant called FIELDTRIP. It's a rice bowl shop, and I think that food is the greatest connector in the whole world. I was born in Long Island. In the kitchen, it would be the pots boiling over, splashing on the burners. And I was always intrigued because my grandmother and my great-great-aunts would be having like the best time of their lives. It seemed like cooking was just the greatest thing ever. The table at my grandmother's house was very enriched in our culture. My grandfather was first generation from Barbados. My grandmother's Afro-Puerto Rican. So this house was a very diaspora house of flavors. But as I look back in my life, I realized that my grandmother injected food DNA into me. And then that's when I started to do deep research on the food of the people. And these people were taking main staples, oysters, potatoes, rice, and wherever they were using the other ingredients around them to make a dish. So in America, you can taste the world. And I think that's important because America is made up of all cultures. And that's what I hope to unfold here. FIELDTRIP is a show about American staples that define history.
So that's a little bit about me. But the first place community started for me, and I believe a lot of people in this room, was at my grandmother's table, right? My retired Puerto Rican grandmother that moved from New York City to the Poconos in Northeast Pennsylvania, and her kitchen was a restaurant. She made her own stocks, she washed her rice, she had a long table that she would decorate. My great-great-aunts were her sous chefs, and we came around that table every day. That was our community inside our house, around the table, which I believe most of you have grown up around a very similar community in your home. Now, that was the first place that I learned that food and community is really important. The second place for me was my dad ran a nonprofit AAU basketball program where he didn't have to do that, but he felt like the community needed it where we were from to unite people through young kids. So community for me as a young teenager, as a young kid, has been prominent in my household, and food was at the center of the table. And fast forward, you think you're gonna veer away from a lot of the things your parents do, or a lot of things your grandma or your aunties do, but that DNA is really inside of you. And I worked at some really great restaurants in New York City. I've been fortunate to cook in Israel and Singapore and Ghana. And when I was cooking overseas, community was there around food, but it happened to be around rice, right? That everywhere rice came, it was the center of the table. People were getting extremely excited about rice. Not like we get excited about rice here, unless you're part of a certain culture. And what I wanted to do with FIELDTRIP was I wanted to bring Field Trip to a community in New York City that would understand rice culture, but also a community that doesn't have the chance to eat really good food. There's a Popeyes on every corner. There's a McDonald's, right? There's all these big chains that are in communities of color that people believe, or developers are telling us that's what these people want to eat. But that's false, right? It's actually a reverse marketing technique that McDonald's and them use to make us believe that these communities don't want our food, that they don't want to consciously eat better. So I really want you to think about your communities, potentially where your restaurants are, potentially where your CPG products are living on the shelf. I want you to look at communities a lot differently, because big brands are in low-income communities. They are making a lot of money in low-income communities. Now, where Field Trip is located is one of the highest unemployment corridors in New York City, in Harlem, between 116th and 115th and Lenox Avenue. The average household income is $22,000 a year, and our check average is $23.50. Right? I'm gonna say that again. It's $22,000 a year, and our average check average is $23.50. Everything on the menu at Field Trip is under $14. So it's the same consumer that's eating at Popeyes. It's the same consumer that's eating at Wingstop. It's the same consumer that's eating at the corner fried chicken, Kennedy's Fried Chicken spot, that consciously wants to eat better. But why do the people believe in Field Trip? Here, I'm gonna.
This morning on The Dish, when a chef has earned a degree from the prestigious Culinary Institute of America and received the coveted James Beard Award, you might expect to find him in a high-end restaurant cooking for diners with deep pockets. But that's not where Joseph J.J. Johnson finds himself. Instead, he's turned his talents towards bringing healthy food to his community through one very special dining spot, with even more on the way.
Without Harlem, I wouldn't be Chef JJ.
To Chef J.J. Johnson, feeding this community is the pinnacle of his culinary career, even as a fast, casual takeout king. How important was it to open Field Trip here?
My goal was to show people that Black and brown communities want health-conscious food or better conscious eating. And why not it be in the heart, between 115th and 116th Malcolm X Boulevard? That's the heart of Harlem. Let's show the world that, and let the people show the world that. That was very important to me.
That's the idea behind Field Trip and its menu, an invitation to connect communities through a single source. Let's talk rice, because rice is such a fixture now. It's the base of Field Trip.
Our slogan is Rice is Culture, and you'll see that reflected in our dishes at Field Trip. All the bowls you eat are influenced by the rice grain. So this is Southeast Asia. This is our veggie bowl that has coconut yogurt, broccoli, jollof. Rice is a mixture of India and West Africa. You have seafood gumbo, our hot honey plantains, shrimp bowl with some coconut sticky rice, green curry, our famous crab pockets that people will fight you for if we run out, our dragon fruit lemonade, some Rice Krispie treats, sake. I brought it all for you.
It's been a dry January for me. But Field Trip opened just 8 months before the pandemic shut down New York City. And with it, Johnson thought his dream. We spoke in April.
Yeah.
You looked worried.
I was always worried. You know me, I'm a fighter. I'm just gonna always go. There's not many things that could really stop me in my tracks. I'm gonna figure out a way around it.
He figured it out when he realized his community needed something more than just home delivery.
The first call came in, and it was an elderly woman. And I delivered that order to that lady, and I'm by the elevator. She shouted, Sir, can you come back? I need help. And I thought about my grandmother. And she was just basically no, can you help me move my oxygen tank? That's where it started. Then it was can you feed my cat?
So you were almost full-time
I was like-
caregiver there.
And then I said, well, where's your caregiver? And she said, well, no caregivers could come to our house because of COVID.
It was that and a conversation with his wife that pushed him to the next level.
My wife came home as a nurse, 1:30 in the morning, saying I didn't eat any food. And I said, well, how can you go the whole day without eating? There was no time to even think about it. And that moment was like, okay, I need to do something. And of course, I sent food to her hospital. That was my first realization of like, okay, now I know who Field Trip is. Now I know our purpose. And we have our marching orders, and let's keep marching.
Born on Long Island, Johnson was raised in the Pennsylvania Poconos and spent a lot of his early childhood prepping food in the kitchen.
My mom would drop us off to my grandparents' house in the morning. She would go to work. My dad would be long gone. And when I grew up, I thought they were my great aunts, but they were my great great aunts that were Puerto Rican, and they were my grandma's sous chefs.
Wow.
So from the beginning of the morning, they'd be cooking. Lunchtime, they'd be making their own stocks. So I would be peeling carrots or onions or celery or washing rice in the sink for them, you know, standing on a milk crate or a step stool.
He was hooked and later went on to graduate from the prestigious Culinary Institute of America, soon after earning a position in the kitchen at New York's famed Tribeca Grill.
Where was I gonna live? I couldn't afford rent. So I had to call my Aunt Jeannie and my Aunt Estelle. They lived together. First day she sat down with me in her apartment. She said, I'm gonna tell you one thing. New York will make you or break you. You figure it out.
His big break came when he was tapped by chef and entrepreneur Alexander Smalls as executive chef of the Cecil and Minton's, Harlem's historic jazz club. After 6 years in fine dining, he opted out.
So I was like, okay, I need to take a risk. I don't know if it was the right time. My wife was pregnant. We're about to have twins, right? So there's never the right time when you want to be an entrepreneur and spread your wings.
Johnson is continuing to spread his wings, opening 2 more field trips, one in Queens, the other in Rockefeller Center. You do realize that you're doing what so many other restaurants are not.
All I can say is praise the Lord.
Is that sunk in? That you're doing what some people say is the impossible?
It sinks in at times, and other times I'm just going.
Yeah, constant motion.
Constant motion. And I think the times that bring you to happiness is when your 95-year-old grandfather says to you, you're doing good, kid, right? Those are the moments where you take a step back and go, okay, this is great.
And before that, I used to sit on the board of Food Bank in New York City. I sit on Rethink Food now, their board, but I never had direct impact in the community. And I watched during the pandemic people that were our customers come and beg for food to work. And at that point, that's when I realized was like, okay, I'm sitting on all this food in our walk-in cooler. What could I do? And luckily, my wife was the one that gave me the idea to feed uptown New York, which was Harlem Hospital, Lincoln Hospital, Mount Sinai, New York Presbyterian. We never went downtown to feed anybody. We just really focused on the community. And what happened was we started to take care of the community, and the community started to take care of us. So that nurse or that doctor that was getting food was telling their kids were taking maybe their last $20 or $15 and coming into Field Trip to eat our food because they saw what we were doing. And without that moment, it's really sad to say in the pandemic, without that moment, the amount of time that the community would have got to know who we were would have taken 4 to 5 years. It took 6 months because people were frozen at home. People were learning about restaurants they didn't know about, and people were spending their money in the places that they didn't want to see closed. Still to this day, we feed folks. We've teamed up with Rethink Food, not to send our food out to anywhere, but we know exactly where our food goes. It goes to a church on 138th Street in Frederick Douglass. They feed the community, whoever's in their community. We give out 200 meals a day, right? And the staff has bought into that. I always said if I was Chipotle during the pandemic, I'd have just been throwing burritos out the door to everybody because the access and the money that they have as a large brand. But if you really go back and think about big food brands in our communities, McDonald's wasn't handing out burgers. Popeyes wasn't handing out chicken. It was really a lot of us, right? So that was an instrumental part of really tapping into the community. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, can I tap into the community? Or maybe I don't belong in the community, or maybe I opened up in this place and I haven't thought about the community. But I guarantee you, most of your staff, and whatever you do, is a part of the community where your place is. And you should take a step back and think to look at them and say, okay, so what do I do for them in the community that our restaurant or our food brand or our company stands in? And you should be able to answer that. You do X, you do this, you do that. You should be able to say that to yourself. And I really call Field Trip a community-driven restaurant because it is a safe space for everybody in the community. If you're a police officer, if you're a firefighter, if you're a guy that hustles on the block, if you're an auntie, if you're a nanny, if you're a mom with a family, it's the most beautiful thing when you walk into Field Trip in our Harlem location that you see everybody sitting there together and the conversation is all around food. Is the pineapple black rice really good? Oh yeah, you gotta get the pineapple black rice with the peri-peri salmon, right? And that's what the vessel of food does, especially in a community that you can embrace. Now, we have 4 field trips now, right? We have one in Rockefeller Center, and the one in Rockefeller Center is the same price as Harlem. We've tapped into our community there, right? What is that community? It is finance people, it is MTA workers, it is construction people working on new restaurants or around, it is teachers, it is everyday New Yorkers, and it has given a place that you don't have to go purchase a $23 salad. You can find a place that you can find something for $9.99 or $10.99 and eat something really delicious. We're opening a new location in Columbia University. For me, it's important before I open a location in a community that I look for who are the community leaders, who's the community board, who are the firefighters, who's running the police precinct, who are the sorority and fraternity presidents, right? Who's a college president? We're constantly doing reach out in these areas because I don't want anybody to ever feel like I'm just opening a door and taking people's money in a community because it's a high density area, right? And yes, I'm looking for a high density area for people to spend money, but I also want to let people know that I'm in tuned in what's going on in that specific community. And I think more than ever right now, as we're seeing agriculture break down, as we're seeing people not want to go to work, right? As we're seeing banks collapse, right? That we really get in tune more with our community more than ever. And that's just I call it like the 4x4 block radius. 4 blocks up, 4 blocks down, 4 blocks over. That's your community wherever your business is in. Even if you're a global conglomerate, you still are impacting communities on where you go because you have that global cash flow, right? And I think that's really important. And if you look at a lot of the sponsors here today, and what Nadal has done is they do a lot of work in the community or in a community, and it might be in your community you don't know. Or you might see them do something in your community where your place is, and you want to know why they haven't called you. You call them and tell them. But it's really important, and I hope you took a little bit away from me today, is that communities are important. The community that you came from is important. If it's from your grandmother's table, if it's from the first restaurant you cooked in, your first internship, community is really big. And I don't want to just say it's like that insular community. It's also the agricultural community too. as much as you impact the agriculture, we purchase rice directly from the farmer, freshly milled, that gets delivered directly to FIELDTRIP. So FIELDTRIP also has a rice community that we're supporting, even if they're in Texas or South Carolina, North Carolina, Maine. They mean a lot to us as well. So I want to say thank you very much, and it was a pleasure talking to you all.